Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad that all of you are here joining us for our FMPhA community call. And we'll just jump right in with the way we start all of our meetings together, and that's to breathe together. So take just a moment, and if you're driving and listening in, please maybe come back to it later. But take a moment to sit up nice and tall, let your feet rest flat on the ground, let your hands rest comfortably in the lap, and take just a moment to notice your body. Notice where that breath wants to move in the chest. Notice your heart rate, and notice how you feel. And when you're ready, draw a big breath in through the nose, and then let a big sigh out. Big breath in through the nose. And let a big sigh out. Big breath in through the nose. And let a big sigh out. And now take just a moment and let your breath come back to an effortless rhythm. And notice where your breath wants to move in the chest. Notice your heart rate. And notice how you feel. And when you're ready, slowly opening the eyes, bringing your awareness back into the room. Thank you all for joining us in that little moment of mindfulness. We love starting out our meetings with this little bit of grounding, something that's inexpensive and free, and we can share this with all of our patients. And it ties in really nicely with what we're talking about in the book of the month, but we'll get to that in just a moment. We have a few announcements. For anyone who's on the call that has not gone through boot camp, we wanted to let you know that the summer cohort begins June 21st, and open enrollment for that will start on June 1st. Do you have anything to add to that, Lauren?
Not particularly. If people have questions about boot camp or want to know what it is, I'll drop the link in the chat. I can also connect you with a state leader if you have state-specific questions and want like a real human being to talk to and understand like what is functional medicine, how do I do this as a pharmacist, what type of practice can I build in my state. We can connect you with one of our awesome state leaders. If you want to do that, just email us or for us to get you directly connected or answer any specific questions that come up.
Thank you.
The landing page that I put in there has a really nice webinar overview, or 7 steps to becoming a functional medicine pharmacist overview. So if you watch that, it'll give you a good preview of the curriculum, and there's actually a second video that'll be on that page once you sign up to watch the first one that we just recorded for the spring, and that goes over all the changes that we added. So if you haven't been around for a long time, we added an entirely new clinical content to the program. We added a certificate of completion and digital badge so that you can like post on your LinkedIn or use it as like a marketing tool on your website to say like functional medicine pharmacist, like completed through FMPhA. So the only thing I would add to that is like, it's not a board certification, right? Like third-party exam, you have to go sit in a proctored center. It's not that. This is, we're granting you a certificate of completion for you to be able to use as a marketing tool. But you're putting in a lot of work to get through the full course. Now it's 10 weeks long. And you'll have a full business plan at the end of it too. So amazing.
Yeah, the clinical content that you've curated through Jessica Mills. Jessica is a naturopath as well as a doctor of pharmacy. And I've been getting to sit in on all the calls, and it's fantastic information. I'm really excited for everyone to have access to this information because it's really well put together and great review and really applicable because it's being taught from a pharmacist. Not that other practitioners who are teaching functional medicine don't have great things to teach us, but it's really nice to hear it from a pharmacist who's been in the trenches, and has lots of practical application tips to share. Okay, upcoming events. We have a clinical call next Tuesday, and the guest speaker will be Jennifer Campbell. She's speaking on behalf of Neurobiologics, and the topic is going to be nutrigenomic testing. And I'm really excited about what she's going to bring to the table for us. And we'll be sending out more information on the call with her bio and some other things as soon as we have that information. And the following Tuesday, so in 2 weeks, we have our quarterly standard process partnership webinar, and we have Karina Toledo, and as well as our own regional leader, Marina Buksov, speaking on the topic of herbalism. So I think that's going to be a really great webinar as well. Do you have any other upcoming events that you want to share, Lauren? Is this where Full Script fits in right now?
Yeah, I will get to that one in a minute if you have other slides. The only other thing I would add for May is right there, IFM.
Yeah, so May IFM, and if you are a member and you have used the discount for IFM membership, then there are discounts available to attending that conference. I wanted to highlight the ASCP Midwest Region meeting. I just got back from the South Central meeting in Irving, Texas, and I presented a case on functional medicine, and it was really well received. I was the last presenter of the day, and I think that's always a stressful spot to be, but they assured me that they saved the best for last. And I think it's really exciting that so many people stayed. You know, that last speaking slot is often one where people are like, oh, you know, I'm just going to duck out early. And the room was packed. It was really full. It's something that people really want to hear. And I expect that they'll be adding some more functional medicine content to the regional meetings. So that one is in Columbus. There might be one more in June. I think it's in Greenville, South Carolina. But I listed that one because I know we have such a hub of functional medicine pharmacists in Ohio that I imagine that someone in our community will be the one invited to present to that. So keep that on your radar. And Lauren, I'm going to let you, oh, one more thing. I forgot we have the age-friendly pharmacist badge. If you guys haven't done that already, it's a free CE. It's grant funded through ASCP and the John Hartford Foundation, and it's 8.2 years of CE. And if you have a board certification in geriatric pharmacy, you can use these as your recertification credits because they are BCGP certified. So that's an option. You can do that whether or not you were in the cohort with us, but we're going to have a wrap-up call just to close out going through all of those modules in the Age-Friendly Pharmacist badge together on Saturday, May the 2nd at 10 a.m. And this was a really great CE to highlight the 4 M's, which are medications, mentation, movement, and what matters most. And all of these things are very much at the forefront of our functional medicine practices. And I think it's just a great review to go through and maybe learn some new resources on how to talk to your patients about what matters most. But I think we do that really well as functional medicine pharmacists and looking at the whole person. And that really is the last thing that I had. Lauren, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to stop my screen share. You guys will have this list of all of the books that we're covering this year on our community calls sent out in the email.
Perfect. Yeah, so I wanted to just share some exciting updates from one of our partners. Most of you guys have probably heard of Full Script. We work really closely with them because it's just kind of a really great starting point for pharmacists that are wanting to get into functional medicine and trying to figure out like how to start generating income from this, or how to start getting access to professional quality supplements or even functional lab testing. And so the lab testing piece has been sort of an evolution over the years. Previously, there were a few different companies like Rupa Health that came onto the scene, and then FullScript actually acquired Rupa Health and has now brought in all of those tests sort of in-house. But the exciting thing that they're launching now is something called Journeys. And you might have seen a little bit about this, but I'm going to walk you guys through how to sign up for it. It's completely free. And what this does is it's very much like a competitor to something like Function Health. If you've seen Function Health from Dr. Mark Hyman, where it's this all-encompassing sort of lab panel that you can get and you can order it yourself. You don't have to go to a doctor's appointment. It's really designed for people that are having a proactive approach to their health, not necessarily like, oh, I'm trying to detect a specific disease, right? Like this is a broad, general wellness focused lab panel that you can have done. And then it relies on AI interpretation, a really nice dashboard, and then kind of gives, again, like general wellness principles around like food that you could eat or supplements you could add, right? And if something is out of range, it does flag it and actually would have, clinician intervention. But what FullScript is doing with the Journeys platform is essentially saying, why send your patients to Function Health? We love Mark Hyman. We are so grateful for everything he's done for functional medicine. But at the end of the day, this is a like private equity backed company that is, essentially taking these labs, and then the patients are coming back to you with the labs and saying, what do I do with all of this? Where it's like, it's in a sense, it's making care more accessible, but it's also causing some fragmentation. So FullScript essentially was like, we can do this better. Like, what if we actually give practitioners, the ability to order these labs, not just for their patients on the platform through Rupa, which is now FullScript Labs, but actually to make this as sort of almost what we call lead magnet in the marketing world, but a first step for patients that are just curious and they're not even a patient yet, right? This is just someone that is like interested in functional medicine, interested in their health, wants to be proactive. And it's an opportunity for us as practitioners to say, yes, we can offer these types of functional lab tests and even just general lab tests to clients, right? Not necessarily patients, but to clients in a way that is wellness focused and health focused, so that you're part of this sort of network lab authorization, right? Where it's like your NPI is not the NPI on the lab test itself. It's all going through FullScript's physician authorization network. So roundabout way of saying like, you can have lab tests that you're recommending for people anywhere in the country, not just in your own state, but it protects you from a legal standpoint in that you're not ordering something outside of your scope or outside of your license. It is simply something you can have where patients, clients, people, human beings can sign up for it, and you can still receive compensation for that, simply because you're the one that's promoting it. So I'm going to drop the first link in the chat here. Before you can sign up for Journeys, you do need to have a FullScript account. So depending on whether or not you've done that before, I'm going to just put that link in the chat right here, and then I'll share my screen really briefly just to show you what that looks like. So if you click on that link, it's the practitioner sign up link. Of note, right? You're not signing up for the patient account. You want to sign up for a if you already have an account, great. You're not going to need to sign up for another FullScript account. But if it's your first time, then you would put your first name, your last name, your dispensary name, which it can either be the name of your business, your LLC, your practice, or just your first and last name, if you don't have something like that set up already. And then you would click agree. And then when you sign up for your sign up method, essentially, this is going to ask you for your credentials. So you'll either enter your NPI. That's the fastest and easiest way. You'll get instantly approved if you put your NPI in there. If you don't have an NPI, you can upload your license information. So like your state license, and it'll just either ask you for like that license number and expiration, or potentially like a screenshot of the information. And that will take a little bit longer just because someone has to approve that. So that's your first step. If you don't have a FullScript account, you'll want to do that first. And then the second step, I'm going to put a link in here for this, is to sign up for Journeys. And that link, let's see if I can open it. I'm going to switch all the tabs and windows. So this is the link for the Journeys sort of landing page, the informational page that gives you information about it. Share tab. So you can kind of read more about it, right? So tools haven't kept pace with the care you want to deliver. Patients are turning to direct consumer platforms for answers. Journeys lets you meet the demand with provider-led solution to deliver integrative care at scale. So the cool thing about this is that you will still get the results. If a patient or a client or someone orders a Journeys panel, you still get the results. You can still actually be involved in that care with them and like guide them through what you would want, without having to actually say like, oh yes, I'm formally taking you on as like a medical or pharmaceutical patient, right? This is the wellness side of ordering labs. And you can kind of make that determination. If you're working with someone who's just truly like your personal patient, you don't need to use Journeys necessarily. You could just be ordering FullScript labs directly inside the FullScript platform, which is the first one that we kind of showed you where you would sign up for that link. But this is like public facing. So when they're talking about a new front door for your practice, you're essentially going to get a web page or a landing page that you can put these different lab panels on, and that people can order without having to make an appointment with you first, right? They can sort of like self-select what kind of care they're looking for, what type of answers they're looking for, and you can customize this as much as you would like. So you can set up all of these different types of templates, right? Health panels, inflammation, cardiometabolic, heart health, there's hormone ones, kind of all these different ones. It does a lot of the interpretation for you, like up front, so that it speeds up the process. Normally, it's like if you were to just order labs, then you're having to sit there and manually read through it and figure out what's going on. This is going to give you an initial interpretation with all the information in there that you would end up putting in on your own anyways, but you can customize it, right? It's like you still are in control of this to review all the information, and it'll even suggest, again, like potential supplements that you might want to recommend. So you would have that ability to say like, okay, you know, here's this person who ran these lab tests. They're not necessarily my patient yet, but now I have this information and they're coming to me for information. They want to know what to do with it. Okay, then we can bring them in and say, you know, here's the supplements we recommend, make them a patient in your FullScript account or a client, right? FullScript also has customizations where you can choose the language there if you're using it for patients or if you're using it for clients. And again, if you're listening to me talk and you're like, what is the difference? Like, why are you like talking so specifically about this? This is the legal side of what it takes to do functional medicine within your scope of practice as a pharmacist, or in what we think of as more of the health coaching or general wellness space, right? There is a difference. This is why we recommend the boot camp, because we really get into the details of determining what side you want to practice on and how to not blur the lines so that you don't end up like crossing a boundary and practicing medicine without a license, right? There are very nuanced ways to be able to do all of these things safely, like within the bounds of the law. So that's sort of the overview of it. there's Emla. She's a pharmacist that's based here in Ohio. So you can kind of watch, you know, these different videos of testimonials of people that are using it and kind of get inspired by it. But it has all of these Q&As at the end that really sort of answer it, right? So like, can you use your own license? Yeah, if you're doing it from FullScript, your regular account. If you're using Journeys, you're using this authorization network so that it's all compliant. You can actually have labs for patients outside of your state, and you don't have to worry about your MPI being attached to it. And that's exactly what this is talking about. If you're in, you know, one state, your person is in another state and they want to work with you and order labs, then this allows you to be able to do that. Except for, of course, our three favorite states, New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island. Sorry, guys. And how does it affect your scope of care, right? General wellness guidance, wellness insights, not medical diagnosis or treatment plans, does not establish provider or patient relationship, and is not a medical provider. You get to choose how you want to follow up with that person and what that looks like. So it's pretty cool. Basically, you'll just want to click the green button here, or at the top of the page, there should be a green button as well. And it would bring you to this page, which is going to have you log into that FullScript account that you created. So that's why I say you have to have a FullScript account first. But then it's going to be able to say, you know, okay, I want to go into, you know, your profile here, and then build your Journeys panels, right? So then this is where you would be able to pick what kind of panels you want to actually have on here. And these are already kind of pre-made, but you can go in and edit them, right? So I'm just going to pick like this very first one, right? You can get blood work done starting at $100, which is like not bad. You can see what's in here. So this is CBC, CMP, A1C, TSH, and a lipid panel. So you can view, you can edit the details, right? You can like totally customize all of this different information. You can even customize the cost. So if you want to make it more expensive, you can. You can add interpretation fees. So you're keeping the majority of that. And then there are the fixed costs for the tests, right? So the test itself is $27. Quest is $10. The authorization fee is $12, right? So you can like customize the pricing that you want to kind of put all in there. You can customize the panels to like add and remove things. You can see exactly what all's in here, right? So CBC, but it's really looking at like all of these things. So very, very detailed. You can change the labeling, all that stuff. So I'll say save. And you can add as many as you want. And then this is the part that you would say, you know, you can recommend labs for out of state compliantly without operational burden. All the things. And you would say agree. And click done. Voila. So then it's live. And now you can click on view. And then it's got my name up here. It's like, this is what you get. That literally took me all of like 5 seconds to set up. And it's ready to go. And I could send this to anyone I know to say like, hey, if you want to order labs, I have labs that you can order. So pretty neat and clean and super easy and organized. Oh, actually, wait, there, now I'm sharing the screen. So yeah, it's got your name up there. Got the information on how it works. You can view the panel, you can click checkout, right? And that's what that looks like. So we're excited for this. This has been a long time coming, but I think it's really going to, again, help with the accessibility of functional medicine, but also keeping it truly personalized and making sure that we've got, you know, oversight and people aren't just ordering labs without someone they can really talk to about it. So it gives you that freedom and flexibility. The last thing I want to share and the last link that I want to put in here is that Lara Zacharia is going to be doing a webinar series actually right after this call. So I will drop the link for how to register for it.
Hello.
But she will be going
A little
over,
late.
nutrient patterns across routine labs. And then there's one the following week. I think they're going on every week for like 4 weeks. Inflammation, thyroid signals, and cardiometabolic. So yay, Lara. We're excited to have a pharmacist that is out here talking about all these new labs for FullScript. So I'll drop that link over here in the chat as well for you guys. So you can sign up for the webinar series. So I think that's it. That's my like brief overview of the FullScript Journeys platform, but I just wanted to get that information out to you guys so you can check it out and see if it's something you want to use in your practices. So yeah, if you have questions, let us know, but I'll stop sharing and I will let Veronica get into our book club for the last half.
Thank you, Lauren. That's really exciting. I had known about the FullScript Journeys, but I didn't realize how much that really opened things up for us. So thank you for that awesome demo and, just for helping all of us stay ahead of what's available to help us practice at the top of our licenses.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited for us to dive into our book from Dr. Aimie Apigian. It is The Biology of Trauma. And I will admit, I didn't make it all the way through the book. I had a very busy month, but I made it about 75% of the way. So I feel like I have a lot to chat with, but I'd love to know in the comments, where are you guys dialing in from? And did you have a chance to read the book? And if anybody has something that they want to share about the book, we can start there. I do have a list of questions, but it's always fun to hear from all of you because we just learn so much when we're here together and sharing resources and our ideas about what we've read. So feel free to unmute or come on camera and let us know, what were your big takeaways from reading The Biology of Trauma?
I also got a copy of the book. Veronica and I got to meet Aimie at Mindshare last year in the fall. And so I read like a few different chapters. I sort of skipped around in this book. Normally I never do that, but yeah, I picked it up and there was like some specific things that I wanted to read that kind of jumped out to me. So I like skipped around and read a few different chapters and passages kind of out of order. But I also gave the book to a friend of mine to read, who I think it like really made a lot of sense. So I've also watched a few of her like webinars and things. She did one with Gabor Mate a while ago that was really interesting. But yeah, I just love that she's sort of taken like all of the different like pieces of the science, but then sort of translated it into like a much more easy to understand way. Because like I love Dr. Mate's work, but it is dense. His audiobooks are like 18 hours long. I tried to start reading The Myth of Normal and I was like, I can't get through this. So yeah, Amy's content was like way easier. She also presented at IFM last year. So I got to see her like presentation version, which was like basically an amazing summary of her book all in like 1 hour. With like slides and visuals and like her backstory, which was just like really amazing. So
she was also a guest speaker on the True Neuro Mastermind, and that's where I was first exposed to her work, and it was really, really great to hear her explanations of breath work and somatic body work. And I found this great quote online that I thought really summarized the book. She emphasizes that mental health and medical approaches are treating downstream symptoms, mood, behavior, organ-specific disease, while we're missing the underlying trauma physiology in the nervous system, the mitochondria, the immune system, and the gut. And I think that's what we're trying to do in functional medicine is address all of those pieces. Nervous system, mitochondria, immune, and gut health, and to add another layer as the thing that's driving a lot of this dysfunction. It's not all purely environmental, that this fight or flight that we're stuck in is a big driver in how we are using our environmental inputs. So I thought that was a really great summary. We have Melanie, who says she's from Wisconsin, loved the book, and was interested in the art therapy section, was hopeful that there was more in there. The extra info from the book from her webpage was challenging to get. I have not been to see the online resources yet, so thank you for bringing that up, that she has additional resources online. I love that you bring up the art therapy, Melanie. Do you want to say more about that? Or if you're able to come off mute? Hi, Colby. I'm glad you're here. I know we've met in the past, chatting on other projects. It's good to see you here. And I saw Sandy come on camera briefly. Sandy, we're glad you're here. We're glad all of you.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you all. So I got the book from you, I think. Thank you so much. I didn't get to finish reading it. I just like Laura and I just briefly read it over, and I think it's very important to address those aspects, different emotions, nervous system, all related to our health. So it's definitely a good book to re-emphasize that part in functional medicine. So thank you for sharing this opportunity with me. Also, I had a conversation with this practitioner who treats Lyme disease, small disease, with a lot of female patients. And she shared their different remedy and protocols that she used. And it was interesting to learn there are different emotions and how, like, traditional Chinese medicine also has a they address that too, but it relates to each organ. For example, lung and a grief, and liver with resentment and all those. And they do have different options other than traditional medicine. So it's definitely something that I am also learning more about. And if you guys want to connect more, I'm open to share what I've been learning so far. It's been fascinating. And there's this company called Bio that I've been learning recently more about, that they're addressing different emotions. So I'm looking forward to learning more about them as well.
Melanie, we're not able to hear you. We always have the chat for backup. While we're waiting on Melanie, excuse me, I wanted to come back to something that you said, Sandy, about the connection of big emotions to the organs. In Texas, pharmacists are recently allowed to offer 5-needle ear acupuncture. We can offer a specific protocol that was developed from NADA, the National Association of Acupuncturists for Recovery Addiction. And they talk about the emotional regulation, and they hit the kidney, liver, and lung points in this particular protocol. So
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Do you have anything on that protocol? That's interesting. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, I'd be happy to send you guys links of the book we use to train on. And honestly, I'm trying to find out what are the rules in all 50 states? Like, could all pharmacists utilize this? So I'm working on learning that for myself, because I'm presenting on the protocol at the ASCP annual meeting in Maryland in October. So I have more to say, but yeah, happy to share those resources.
Hey.
Melanie,
You.
you're welcome. Melanie, did you have anything you wanted to share about art therapy? Oh, here we go. Art therapy. The client draws from memory all the steps that are remembered while verbally speaking about the self in third person. There are so many different art therapy ways to process, and at the end, they draw themselves safely. Yes, I've done a similar exercise during mind body medicine training where we were supposed to draw ourselves as we were right now and then draw ourselves as we would like to be and then talk about what are the steps needed to get there. I think there's so many different ways to use that drawing process. I've used it in my diabetes prevention classes and asked my patients to draw a picture about why they're taking the diabetes prevention class. And it really gets them out of their left brain. And as they're describing their pictures, like a lot of really big stuff comes out. It's pretty cool stuff that I don't think they would probably tell me if we were just asking them outright, why are you here? But then have to draw a picture about it and then have to explain to the room. I guess they don't have to, but they're invited to share what's in their picture and why is it so important to them. Yeah, I love that it helps connect the right and the left hemispheres. I know for me personally, I need to get out of my left brain. Like, I just want to live in my left brain and in the analytical all the time. And so I love all these different ways to be creative and outlet things because it keeps me out of my thinking brain and puts me in my right brain where I get to process things more organically instead of trying to put my type A pharmacist brain on it. Thank you for sharing that, Melanie. I hadn't gotten that far in the book to read about how she's using art therapy for her patients. So thank you for bringing that up. Anybody else have something they would like to share from the book? Any stories that stood out to you, or maybe moments when you identified that, wow, this is happening in my life and I hadn't put the trauma label on it, or I hadn't recognized it as a trauma response? Melanie says polyvagal theory is new to me. I've been hearing about it, and I think I've been learning it in different words. It describes a lot of what I learned in my yoga teacher training, but we weren't using that word. I think polyvagal theory is a relatively new term in my own vocabulary.
The first person I heard talking about it was Christina Fontana, the pharmacist coach. She's done a lot of work in that space with some of the like rapid transformation techniques and everything. And like a lot of it's about like nervous system regulation and like bringing your body back into safety through like different physical modalities and stuff. Yeah, I think about it in terms of like, the simplification of it that they say is like a top down versus bottom up. So like body to brain or brain to body. So in things like CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy, it's much more of a top down approach because the modality for CBT is that your thoughts create your actions. So it's like you have to be able to change your thoughts in order to change your actions. But where sometimes I think patients struggle with like changing their thoughts is they don't have body awareness to know how to get themselves back into the present moment, because you can't think yourself into the present moment. Like that's very hard to do. That's the whole concept of meditation, is like if you're thinking about something, you're not you're not physically here. Like you're somewhere else in your mind. So like, how do you ground yourself into reality? And that's where like you bring in your five senses. So another terminology is like somatic practices or interoception. I always say it wrong. Interoception is like being able to feel what is happening in your body. And that's like another like really clear indicator that someone's probably like struggling with this. If you like ask them to describe like, how are you feeling? And they're gonna be like, oh, I'm stressed, or like I'm anxious. And it's like, yeah, but where in your body do you feel your anxiety? And like if someone gets triggered by that question of like, what do you mean, where do I feel it? Like, I'm anxious. That's like, oh yeah, we gotta get them like in it. So then you think, okay, what does anxiety feel like to you? Like, is your heart racing? Are your hands sweating? Are you gritting your teeth? Are you have tension in your neck? Right? Like, what is your body physically doing that is also contributing to actually causing these like sensations and these thoughts? So like when you actually shift like your body and how you're sitting, you sit up taller or you like breathe deeper. My favorite trick that I learned in yoga is there's like a very loose interpretation of a phrase that was like, you can't be depressed if you have your armpits open. So like literally if you raise your hands above your head, what does this do? It literally shunts all the blood flow to your heart. And like it just like if you try it, like I can't do this without smiling because like it's like that power pose, right? Like that star warrior pose. Like it's really hard to do this with a straight face and like be angry. Like like so this is just like a silly fun example, but it shows the power of like our body on our mental state. So that's my like very non-scientific description of polyvagal theory. I love MBSR, so mindfulness-based stress reduction. I have a picture of me and JKZ, John Kabat-Zinn, the founder of MBSR, at the Integrative Medicine Symposium in 2023. It's a really cool moment. Like there was like a little, I don't know, kickoff gala type of thing or whatever. I'm just like chilling in the back, and then all of a sudden I look next to me and he's like standing right next to me, and I was like, hi. Can I get a selfie? Like I am totally gonna fangirl right now. Can I get a selfie with you? Like this is cool. So
That's awesome. You bringing that up, Lauren, makes me think of laughter yoga. I don't know if anyone's ever taken a laughter yoga class, but like it is contagious and you cannot help but feel good. Bust in a gut laughing.
yeah, I had a yoga teacher when I like first moved to Dayton, Ohio, when I started practicing yoga in this really little studio. And like a lot of times I'd be the only person that would show up. Like nobody else would even show up to class because it was so small. So there was one time that like me and him literally just did a like laughter yoga session together. And it was so hilarious. I was like, this is the most awkward thing I've ever done. But then once we started, like, we are just cracking up. Like, my stomach hurt at the end of it. My face hurt at the end of it because we were just laughing so hard.
Love it. Oh, I thought this was a great question to think about in regards to the book, is that our book links trauma to mitochondrial dysfunction, inflammation, and neurotransmitter imbalance. So how does this learning about the trauma response, how does that help us explain poor adherence or suboptimal responses to antidepressants and anti-inflammatories in our patients that have a history of trauma? Or are we asking, what is their history of trauma? Like what questions have we started to think about that we can ask to get some of this information from our patients to know, like maybe we need to help refer them on for something else. If they're having a suboptimal response, before we reach for another drug or even another supplement, is there another practitioner with a different set of skills and things to work through that we could refer them to optimize their response?
Yeah, I think it's great that, yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lauren.
No, no,
Oh, no, no. I was just saying that if the patient comes and you talk and, there's just, if patient thinks they're okay, but they suddenly tear up or, like something's there, then you know that unconsciously it's there for them. So I think that's a part where like it just shows, So, and then that's when you can probably, oh, this patient might have something else, so we can talk more about, and refer. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna add this whole concept around like mitochondrial dysfunction being tied to trauma is something known as the cell danger response. So you're gonna start hearing more and more and more about mitochondrial health, cell danger response. Like this is where energy medicine becomes very real, and it goes from being this like woo-woo spiritual sort of thing to like, no, energy, like we all remember mitochondria and ATP production. Literally, like you get stuck in this cell danger response and your mitochondria are only making like very minimal ATP. Like compared to the 30 plus that they should be making, they're making like 2. So this is the scientific biological mechanism of how trauma like can literally cause chronic fatigue and all of these symptoms that show up, which leads to like metabolic dysfunction and like all the other things, right? Like our inflammation responses aren't like working properly. And like a lot of this is also what's now being called functional medicine 2.0. So it's like the origins with functional medicine is like, oh, everything begins in the gut. It's all like microbiome influenced and, all this kind of stuff, which is a big part of it. But now we're getting even like deeper into the cellular level, at like literally the ATP, like energetic level of things. So if you hear that terminology used or you see that type of stuff, like this is kind of where it's all starting to come together. And this is why we see sometimes in functional medicine that it's like you're doing all the things, but the patient's still not getting better. And it's like, oh, we got to go deeper because there's more to uncover here. And sometimes it's actually not about doing more, it's about doing less. Because they're in this state of overwhelm and they really just have to get their nervous system and their like energetic levels calm so we can heal and then we can optimize.
Yeah, I have to agree that for me, I thought it was such a great reminder and an explanation of taking a step back. It's easy to maybe judge our patients as not wanting to put in the work or lazy or, whatever label might, pop up in your head, and take a step back and recognize like, no, they physically don't have the energy to do what you're asking them to do. And how do you support their nervous system in the ways that it needs so that they then have the energy to do what you're asking them to do? And I think I've known this, but it just explained it and gave me better language around it. And I thought it was really helpful. I don't feel like I have judgments for a lot of my patients. I feel like I do a reasonably good job of being trauma informed and recognizing things, but I think this just added another layer of my understanding and the compassion and empathy I could bring to the care of my patients. Melanie says surveys, maybe asking bubble questions. That's a really great thought, Melanie. Like, I wonder if I know we've got the ACEs, like the adverse child experiences scores. and we've got like PHQ-9 and GAD-7. Like those are different surveys where we can kind of assess our patients. So I think that's a really great idea to like look through some of those promise questionnaires and see if there's one that maybe fits our needs and the patients to help us open up the conversation. And if anybody has a resource that you're already using, like please feel free to hop on and share it. I think that's one of the greatest things we get out of these calls is when someone says, hey, I'm using this tool or I'm using this questionnaire. And it's really helpful for us to add new tools to the toolbox. In the comments, it says, what are the bubble questions? I'm guessing that Melanie's just meaning like, are there questions or surveys that the patient could like check yes or no to, or if there's something that has a score, like on a scale of, 1 to 10, how overwhelmed do you feel with this or whatever. Like there's a promise. One of the like global promise scales has some questions like, asking like on a scale of 1 to 5, are you able to complete your daily tasks? And it's got some questions like that that might give us some insight for the patient. I wish I knew which promise score it was. Like I know Farm to Table, we've got 1 or 2 standard promise scores that are built into our patient intake. And I don't know like the number, there's different ones. And I don't know off the top of my head the number of the promise scores that we're using. But I assume bubble questions is just like yes or no inventory type questions. I know we're coming up at the top of the hour or end of the hour. Is there anything burning or questions you guys want to bring up? I really want y'all to feel like you get the most out of this and that you can have your voice heard here because everybody's so important. We love that you guys are here and sharing your time and energy and expertise with us.
Hi guys, it's Ro, Miami pharmacist. I just wanted to share. Does anyone? I didn't read the book, but I love the subject, so I popped in. And but I am familiar with a lot of what we talked about today, and I was wondering if any of you guys like ecstatic dance or like 5 rhythms, because I feel like those type of things, even if it's not consciously maybe moving like the trauma, it does move it. I know for sure, but I don't know. I started doing the 5 rhythms, and the woman who teaches it is like a somatic therapist, so it's like this amazing combo. So I was just curious if you guys, your thoughts are on that subject. So because I love it, and I just wanted to bring it up. So thanks.
I am a huge fan of ecstatic dance. I have heard of 5 rhythms. I remember looking into it briefly. I would say ecstatic dance is probably not the place for most people who have experienced a lot of trauma to start, unless they already have like a love for dance. Just because it can be probably a little triggering for some people who aren't used to seeing people like in their full expression of wildness. Like it can be a little weird, but everyone's different. I think it can be like a really great modality. Again, like if people are into dance and that's something they'd be open to, is super healing for me. Super healing. And there's actually one run that I did called Transcendence that I think might be a little bit more accessible in terms of like a structured dance format. And it is by a woman named Jennifer Jimenez. And it sort of like guides you through these like 10, I think it's like 10 steps, but it starts really like slow and kind of gentle. And then it sort of builds up to like moving around the room more and like going more up tempo. And then there's some partner work where you're actually doing like mirror neuron work where you just like imitate what the other person's doing and like you focus on like making eye contact and everything. So yeah, check out Transcend Dance. It's pretty neat as well. Yeah, 5 Rhythms was the other one. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'll have to check out 5 Rhythms. I'm reminded of something that I learned in mind body medicine training, and I think the composer's name was Duder, and it was something that I know it was a Kundalini meditation. Oh, I can see the name of the practitioner. Anyway, it was this great chaotic xylophone music, and we were all invited to shake our bodies. They never used the word dance because many people associate it with a specific thing, or maybe there's shame involved, or, oh, I'm not a good dancer. And so we just started out with this chaotic xylophone music and, moved your body in any way that you wanted. And then it keeps going on, and then it evolves into this structured, really fun, very danceable music, but everyone is just like, move your body however you feel like. And it's almost an hour long, and then by the end of it, the music cools down, and then you're invited to do whatever you want, whether that's lay down and take a shavasana or lay down in corpse pose. It was a really cool experience, a lot of fun, but it starts out with no discernible movements, and then do whatever you want. Osho, meditation from Osho. Like, I don't know why that was so hard to come up with. If I can find it, I'll see if we can send it out with a newsletter so you guys can listen to that track and have some of your own ecstatic dance at home.
Nice. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys all so much for joining us today. And hopefully, if you go back, you can register for Lara's meeting that's going to start right now. We'd love to see you guys on there. If you have questions, again, just send us an email to info@FMPhA, and we'll see you guys next month.
Yes, thank you all for being here. We appreciate you. See you soon.
Thank you. Bye.